Commander Vextal had seen many things in his 300 years of service to the Zephyrian Empire. He had fought rebel fleets, watched entire star systems fall to plague, and witnessed the birth of new worlds. But nothing had prepared him for what appeared on his screens that morning. The sensor readings made no sense. 200 ships, maybe more, moving in perfect formation toward the Outer Rim territories. The energy signatures were unlike anything in the Galactic database. They were too big to be pirates, too organized to be refugees, and too powerful to be from any known enemy. "Sir, we're getting more reports from the border stations," his aide whispered, fear clear in her voice. "The fleet is massive, bigger than anything we've ever seen." Vextal stared at the numbers. Each ship in the approaching fleet was at least twice the size of their heavy cruisers. Some were as large as their capital ships. His claws tapped nervously against the metal desk as he tried to make sense of it all. "Run the signatures again," he ordered. "Check them against every known species in the galaxy." The computer hummed for several minutes before giving its answer. No match found. Unknown origin. Far across the galaxy, Captain Jake Murphy stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching the stars through the massive viewport. His ship had once been a cargo hauler, carrying supplies between Earth's mining colonies. Now it bristled with weapons salvaged from crashed alien scouts and communication equipment that could reach across half the galaxy. Final system check. "Captain," his first officer reported. "All ships report ready for jump." Murphy nodded. Around him, the bridge crew worked at stations that had been designed for moving freight, not fighting wars. But these people had adapted. They all had. When humanity discovered they weren't alone in the galaxy, they had done what they always did. They improvised, they adapted, and they survived. "How many ships do we have in total?" Murphy asked. 237, sir. Everything from colony ships to mining platforms. Even got 3 luxury cruise liners from the Mars route. Murphy almost smiled. The Zephyrians would be looking at their sensors right now, trying to figure out what was coming their way. They would see the massive energy signatures, the size of the fleet, the organized formation. What they wouldn't see was the truth. Most of his warships were converted civilian vessels. The luxury liners now carried soldiers instead of tourists. The mining ships had their rock crushers pointed outward instead of down. The colony ships held entire families instead of just colonists. Every human settlement in 3 star systems had contributed something to this fleet. Back on the Zephyrian command station, Vextal called for an emergency meeting with the sector commanders. The holographic images of 6 other military leaders appeared around his desk. "We have a problem," Vextal began. "A large unknown fleet is approaching our territory. Intelligence suggests they're not from any known civilization." "How large?" asked Commander Zefki, the youngest of the group. "Over 200 ships. Many are dreadnought class or larger." The room fell silent. The Zephyrian Empire had the most powerful military in the galaxy, but they had never faced a fleet this size from an unknown enemy. "What do we know about their intentions?" another commander asked. "Nothing yet. They're maintaining radio silence, but their course is directly toward our outer colonies." "Could they be the humans?" Zefki suggested. "We've had reports of increased activity in their systems." The older commanders laughed. "The humans barely have fusion drives," one said. "They're confined to maybe 4 or 5 star systems. They couldn't field a fleet of fishing boats, let alone something like this." Vextal wasn't so sure. The human worlds had been quiet lately. Too quiet. Their intelligence reports showed normal civilian traffic, normal mining operations, normal colony ships. But what if they were wrong? On the Liberty, Murphy reviewed the final reports from his fleet commanders. Lisa Bennett, his chief engineer, had worked miracles converting civilian ships into something that could fight. She had taken cargo holds and turned them into weapon bays. She had modified mining lasers to cut through armor plating. She had even figured out how to use the massive fusion engines from the colony ships to power weapons that could punch holes in battleships. "The conversion work is complete on all ships," Bennett reported. "We've got enough firepower to level a small moon." What about the Zephyrians? Murphy asked. Are they buying it? His intelligence officer, Amy Rodriguez, pulled up the intercepted communications. They're panicking, sir. They think we're some kind of unknown galactic power. They have no idea. We're just a bunch of miners and colonists with modified equipment. Murphy looked out at his fleet. Every ship represented years of human work, human dreams, human determination. The cruise ship, UES Paradise, had carried rich tourists to see the rings of Saturn. Now it carried 3,000 soldiers ready to fight for humanity's future. The mining platform UES Digger had once stripped asteroids bare. Now its rock crushers were aimed at enemy ships. Sir, we're getting a transmission from the Zephyrian border stations, the communications officer reported. Put it through. The alien voice was strained with worry. Unknown fleet, you are entering Zephyrian space. Identify yourselves and state your intentions. Murphy looked around his bridge. These people had spent their lives building, mining, farming, and exploring. They had never wanted to be warriors. But when the choice was between fighting and watching their species die, they had chosen to fight. Open a channel, Murphy ordered. The communication system crackled to life. This is Captain Jake Murphy of the United Earth Fleet. We're here to stay. The silence that followed was deafening. In that moment, the Zephyrian Empire realized they were facing something they had never encountered before. Not just a fleet, but an entire civilization on the move. And that civilization was human. Fleet Admiral Crixvin had ruled the outer sectors of the Galactic Empire for over 4 centuries. His massive warship, the Eternal Glory, was a symbol of imperial power that had never known defeat. But as he stared at the emergency reports flooding his command center, he felt something he had not experienced in decades. Fear. Humans? He growled, his voice echoing through the bridge. You're telling me that primitive species has assembled this Armada? His intelligence chief, a nervous creature named Zelmon, shuffled through the data tablets. Sir, according to our latest reports, the human civilization barely reached their 4th planet. They use crude fusion rockets and have maybe 50 ships total. This fleet has over 200 vessels. Crixvin slammed his fist on the command table. Then where did these ships come from? Did they discover some ancient alien technology? Are they being backed by another empire? The truth was far more disturbing than Crixvin could imagine. Deep in the intelligence archives, buried under years of routine surveillance reports, lay the real story of human expansion. But no one had bothered to read the details. The Empire saw what it expected to see, a young species taking baby steps into space. On Earth, President Helen Carter stood before the United Earth Council in an emergency session. The massive chamber, built deep underground in the Rocky Mountains, buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from every human colony, every mining station, every research outpost had gathered for this moment. Operation Exodus is now active, Carter announced. Every available ship has been committed to the fleet. We have converted our entire space-based infrastructure into a migration force. General Ryan Brooks stepped forward with the tactical display. The holographic image showed the true scope of human space operations. Unlike other species, humans had not built a few large colonies. They had spread like seeds across dozens of systems, establishing mining operations, research stations, and small settlements wherever they could find resources. The Galactic Empire believes we have 50 ships, Brooks explained. They count only our military vessels and large colony transports. They don't know about our industrial fleet. The display zoomed in on the human fleet composition. The cruise ship Paradise carried 3,000 soldiers, but it also carried their families. The mining platform Digger had been converted into a weapons platform, but it still retained its massive industrial fabrication systems. The research vessel Endeavour now served as a command ship, but its scientific equipment had been modified for electronic warfare. Every cargo hauler, every passenger liner, every mining barge, every research ship, every construction platform, we've turned our entire civilization into a fleet, Carter said. Back in Zephyrian space, Dr. Zenthara, the Empire's leading xenobiologist, worked frantically in her laboratory. She had been studying human development patterns for decades, but Only now did she realize the magnitude of her oversight. "It's impossible," she muttered, reviewing the data. "No species develops this quickly." Her assistant brought her another report. "Doctor, we've discovered something disturbing. The humans didn't just build ships, they built entire industrial systems in space." Synthara pulled up the surveillance images from human space. What she saw defied everything she knew about civilization development. Most species built a few large space stations and slowly expanded outward. Humans had done something completely different. They had built hundreds of small stations, thousands of automated mining platforms, and countless small outposts. Each human settlement was small and seemingly insignificant. But when combined, they represented an industrial capacity that rivaled the core worlds of the Empire. "Look at this," her assistant said, pointing to a mining operation in the asteroid belt of the human home system. "They're not just mining rocks. They're building ships directly in space using raw materials." Zenthara felt her blood run cold. They've turned their entire star system into a shipyard. On the bridge of the Liberty, Captain Murphy reviewed the reports from his converted fleet. What the Empire saw as an invasion force was actually something far more significant. Humanity's entire space-based civilization on the move. "Captain, we're getting reports from all ship commanders," Lieutenant Rodriguez said. "The Zephyrians are calling for reinforcements from 3 different sectors." Murphy nodded. The alien response was exactly what they had hoped for. The Empire was treating them as a military threat, not understanding that every human ship carried not just weapons but entire communities. "What's the status on the colony preparation?" Murphy asked. Chief Engineer Bennett consulted her tablet. "All colony ships report ready for settlement operations. We have enough equipment and personnel to establish 50 permanent settlements in the first wave." The truth was that Operation Exodus wasn't just a military campaign. It was the largest migration in human history. Every ship in the fleet carried the tools, knowledge, and people needed to rebuild human civilization in a new part of the galaxy. Back on the Eternal Glory, Admiral Crixvin struggled to understand the intelligence reports. The humans had supposedly launched their fleet from only a few systems, but the logistics didn't make sense. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "our scouts indicate the human fleet has industrial support ships. They're manufacturing weapons and ammunition while traveling through space." "That's impossible," Crixvin said. "No fleet operates with that kind of self-sufficiency." What Crixvin didn't understand was that humans had spent centuries perfecting the art of survival in hostile environments. Every human space settlement was designed to be completely self-sufficient. They could manufacture everything from complex electronics to fusion reactors using only raw materials. The human fleet wasn't just a military force. It was a complete industrial civilization, compressed into a mobile form and aimed at claiming new territory. "Sir, we're receiving more reports," Zelmon said nervously. "The human fleet appears to be expanding. Our scouts report new ships joining the formation." Crixvin stared at the tactical display. The human fleet had grown from 200 ships to over 300 in just a few days. How was that possible? The answer was simple, but terrifying. The humans weren't just moving their existing fleet. They were building new ships as they traveled, using mobile construction platforms and raw materials harvested from asteroids along their route. "Order all available fleets to converge on the border zones," Crixvin commanded. "We need to stop them before they establish a foothold in our territory." But deep down, he was beginning to realize that they weren't facing a conventional invasion. They were facing something much worse. A species so adaptable and resourceful that they could rebuild their entire civilization while fighting a war. The humans weren't just coming to conquer. They were coming to stay. The first battle began at dawn in the Kepler 442 system, where a small Zephyrian patrol fleet encountered the leading edge of the human armada. Commander Thexaval expected a straightforward engagement against an unknown enemy. What he got instead was a lesson in human creativity that would haunt his dreams for the rest of his life. Captain Murphy watched the tactical display from the bridge of the Liberty as his converted fleet approached the enemy positions. The Zephyrians had formed a standard defensive line, just as their military doctrine required. It was exactly what Lieutenant Commander Amy Rodriguez had predicted. Enemy ships are moving into position, Rodriguez reported. They're following standard Imperial battle formations. Murphy almost smiled. The aliens were fighting by the book, while humans had thrown the book away decades ago. Signal all ships. Begin Operation Phantom. Across the human fleet, cargo containers that had once held mining equipment suddenly activated. Each container broadcast fake energy signatures, making single ships appear as entire squadrons. The luxury liner Paradise, carrying 3,000 human families, suddenly looked like a massive battle group on Zephyrian sensors. Commander Thexval stared at his displays in horror. How many ships are out there? Sensors show over 500. Contacts, sir, his tactical officer replied. But the numbers keep changing. What Thexval couldn't see was that half the contacts were fake. The humans had modified commercial broadcasting equipment, the kind used to guide cargo ships, to create false signals. Every real human ship was surrounded by dozens of phantom contacts that appeared and disappeared like ghosts. On the converted research vessel Endeavour, Commander Pete Collins coordinated the deception with his crew of former scientists and engineers. Dr. Maria Santos, who had once mapped star formations, now used her knowledge of space to confuse enemy sensors. Deploy the drone swarm, Collins ordered. The Endeavour's cargo bay opened, releasing thousands of small objects into space. To the Zephyrians, they looked like fighter craft. In reality, they were modified mining drones, equipped with simple weapons and programmed to swarm enemy ships like angry insects. The Zephyrian pilots had never faced anything like it. Their fighters were designed to engage similar craft in organized formations. The human drones attacked from every direction at once with no pattern or formation. Some carried explosives, others carried communication jammers, and still others simply rammed into enemy ships to disable their sensors. Sir, we're being overwhelmed, Thexval's wingman reported. There are too many of them. But the real shock came when the human ships themselves began to fight. The mining platform Digger, commanded by former asteroid miner Kevin Walsh, demonstrated what happened when industrial equipment was turned into weapons. The Digger's rock crusher, designed to break apart asteroids, tore through the armor of a Zephyrian cruiser like it was made of paper. Its tractor beam, meant for moving cargo, grabbed an enemy fighter and hurled it into another ship. Even its cargo containers became weapons, launched at high speed toward enemy positions. The Zephyrians had trained to fight other military vessels. They had no idea how to respond to ships that used construction tools as weapons, that deployed mining equipment as tactical systems, and that treated space debris as ammunition. Fall back to the outer defense line, Thexval ordered, but it was too late. The human fleet had already surrounded his forces using maneuvers that made no tactical sense. On the Paradise, Colonel Diana Hayes watched her soldiers prepare for boarding operations. These weren't professional military troops, they were colonists, miners, engineers, and farmers. But they had spent their entire lives working in the harsh environment of space. Remember, their ships are designed for their comfort, Hayes told her troops. We're used to hard vacuum and radiation. That gives us the advantage. The Paradise moved alongside a damaged Zephyrian destroyer. Instead of using military boarding pods, the humans cut through the hull with industrial cutting tools. Their environmental suits, designed for construction work in space, proved more durable than military armor. The Zephyrian crew inside the ship had never faced boarders who could work in conditions that would kill most military forces. The humans sealed off sections of the ship using emergency repair foam, cut through bulkheads with mining lasers, and moved through areas with no atmosphere as easily as walking through air. Back on his flagship, Admiral Crixvin received the reports from the battle with growing disbelief. They're using cargo containers as weapons? Mining equipment as tactical systems? Yes, sir, his communications officer confirmed. Our forces report that every human ship fights differently. They don't follow any known tactical doctrine. Crixvin pulled up the battle recordings. What he saw defied everything he knew about space combat. Human ships moved in patterns that seemed random, but were somehow coordinated. They used their industrial equipment in ways that no military force had ever considered. Look at this, his tactical officer said, highlighting one section of the battle. This human ship is using its cargo loading system to launch debris at our fighters. This one is using construction drones to repair battle damage while still fighting. And this one, he paused. This one is manufacturing ammunition during the battle. The truth was that humans had turned warfare into just another industrial process. Every ship in their fleet could produce weapons, repair damage, and adapt to changing conditions because that's what human space industries did every day. On the Liberty, Murphy received reports from all sectors of the battle. Status report, Rodriguez. Enemy forces are retreating from 3 systems, sir. They're calling for reinforcements from the core worlds. What about casualties? Minimal on our side. The enemy couldn't adapt to our tactics. Murphy looked out at his fleet. The human ships showed battle damage, but they were already repairing, themselves using mobile construction systems. The mining platforms were collecting debris from destroyed enemy ships, turning it into raw materials for weapons and armor. Sir, we're intercepting Zephyrian communications, the signals officer reported. They're describing us as, he paused, as a swarm intelligence that fights like a hive mind. Murphy almost laughed. The aliens thought humans were some kind of collective consciousness because they coordinated so well. They didn't understand that humans had spent decades learning to work together through global communication networks and social media. Every human in the fleet was connected to every other human through quantum communication systems. When one ship discovered an effective tactic, every other ship knew about it within minutes. When one crew solved a problem, the solution spread through the entire fleet instantly. The Zephyrians fought as individual ships with limited communication. The humans fought as a single organism with thousands of bodies, sharing information and adapting in real time to every change in the battle. Signal the fleet, Murphy ordered. Prepare for the next phase. We're moving deeper into their territory. The first battle was over, but it was just the beginning. The Galactic Empire was about to learn that they weren't just fighting a fleet. They were fighting an entire civilization that had turned survival into an art form. 3 weeks into the human advance, Admiral Crixvin stood in his command center watching his carefully planned defense lines crumble one by one. The reinforcements from the core worlds had arrived 2 days ago, doubling his fleet strength. It hadn't mattered. The humans kept coming, and worse, they kept adapting. Sir, the Meridian defense grid has fallen, his aide reported. The humans broke through using unconventional methods, Crixvin growled. Define unconventional. They turned their cargo ships into battering rams, sir, loaded them with explosives, and rammed them into our defense stations. But before impact, they evacuated the crews using small shuttles that we couldn't track because they looked like space debris. On the human side, Chief Engineer Lisa Bennett reviewed the latest battle reports with her counterpart on the horizon, Commander Kevin Walsh. Their fusion-powered ships had been running continuously for weeks, something that should have been impossible with their supposedly primitive technology. How are your reactors holding up? Bennett asked over the communication link. Better than expected, Walsh replied. These old fusion plants might not be as fancy as their exotic matter reactors, but they just keep running. We've been in battle for 3 weeks straight, and I haven't had to shut down once for maintenance. The truth was becoming clear to both sides. Human technology looked primitive because it was designed to be reliable, not impressive. While the Empire used advanced exotic matter reactors that required constant maintenance and rare materials, humans used simple fusion systems that could run for years on basic hydrogen fuel. Their ships should have run out of power days ago, complained Commander Vextal to his engineering staff. How are they still fighting? His chief engineer, brilliant scientist named Keltar, had been studying captured human technology. Sir, their power systems are incredibly inefficient by our standards, but they're also incredibly robust. They can run on any hydrogen-rich material. They've been refueling from ice asteroids and even the water vapor in nebulae. Meanwhile, on the surface of the contested world of Zephyr Prime, Colonel Diana Hayes led her ground forces in what would later be called the most unusual planetary assault in galactic history. Her troops weren't professional soldiers, but they had something the Empire's military had never encountered: practical experience with hostile environments. Remember, their cities are climate-controlled, Hayes told her squad leaders. They've never had to work in extreme conditions. Use that against them. The human ground forces included miners who were used to working in zero atmosphere, construction workers who regularly operated in extreme temperatures, and agricultural engineers who understood how to survive on limited resources. Their environmental suits designed for industrial work could operate in conditions that would kill military forces. The Zephyrian defenders watched in horror as human forces advanced through areas that should have been impassable. The humans walked through toxic gas clouds using mining suits designed for chemical processing. They crossed lava fields using heat-resistant gear meant for working near fusion reactors. They even fought underwater using diving equipment originally built for deep-sea mining operations. How are they surviving in the methane swamps? Demanded General Kexmore, the planetary defense commander. His intelligence officer checked the reports. Sir, they're using agricultural suits designed for working with dangerous chemicals. They're treating our defensive barriers like farm work. Back in space, the true scope of human industrial capacity was becoming apparent. The Empire's tactical computers had been designed to track military fleets with predictable logistics needs. They couldn't process what the humans were doing. Sir, the human fleet is expanding again, reported the Eternal Glory sensor operator. We now count over 400 ships. Admiral Crixvin slammed his fist on the command table. Where are they getting new ships from? The answer was both simple and terrifying. The humans weren't getting new ships. They were building them. Mobile construction platforms in the human fleet were manufacturing new vessels using raw materials salvaged from battles and collected from asteroid fields. Captain Murphy coordinated the construction efforts from the Liberty's Bridge. Civilian contractor Nathan Price, whose expertise in freight management had proven invaluable, worked with a team of engineers to coordinate the largest mobile manufacturing operation in Galactic. History: We've completed 15 new ships this week, Price reported. The mining platforms are providing raw materials faster than we can process them. Dr. Grace Turner, the former agricultural engineer, had solved one of the fleet's biggest challenges: keeping everyone fed during an extended military campaign. Her hydroponic systems, originally designed for farming on Mars, now operated in the vacuum of space, growing food for the entire human fleet. We're actually producing more food than we're consuming, Turner reported to Captain Murphy. The closed-loop systems are working perfectly. We could maintain this fleet indefinitely. The Empire's intelligence services were baffled. Military fleets required massive supply lines and regular resupply missions. The human fleet seemed to be completely self-sufficient, growing larger and stronger with each passing day. They're not following any known military doctrine, Dr. Zenthera reported to Admiral Crixvin. Their entire fleet operates like a single organism. Each ship supports every other ship. They share resources, distribute labor, and coordinate activities in ways that suggest a level of social organization we've never encountered. What the Empire didn't understand was that human society had been shaped by centuries of cooperation and competition. Global communication networks had taught humans to coordinate on a massive scale. Social media had created a species that naturally shared information and adapted quickly to changing situations. The human fleet communicated constantly. When the mining ship Prospector discovered a new tactic for disabling enemy shields, every ship in the fleet knew about it within minutes. When the research vessel Pioneer developed a new type of electronic warfare system, the design specifications were transmitted to every construction platform immediately. Sir, we're detecting something unprecedented, the Empire's chief military analyst reported to Admiral Crixvin. The human fleet appears to be evolving tactically in real time. They're not just adapting to our strategies, they're anticipating them. The truth was that human warfare had become a collective effort involving hundreds of thousands of minds working together. Every colonist, every miner, every engineer in the fleet contributed ideas and solutions. The humans weren't just fighting with ships and weapons. They were fighting with the accumulated knowledge and creativity of their entire civilization. Captain Murphy received the latest intelligence reports from Amy Rodriguez. Sir, Empire forces are retreating from 6 more systems. They're establishing a new defense line around their core worlds. What's our status? All ships operational. Construction platforms report they can maintain current production levels indefinitely. Food production is stable. Morale is high. Murphy looked out at his fleet. What had started as a desperate evacuation had become something else entirely. The humans weren't just surviving in hostile space. They were thriving. They had turned their entire civilization into a machine for expansion and adaptation. Signal all ships, Murphy ordered. Prepare for the final phase. We're going to establish permanent settlements in the core systems. The Empire was about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't superior technology or military genius. It was their ability to turn any situation, no matter how desperate, into an opportunity for growth and expansion. The refugees had become conquerors, not through force, but through the simple act of refusing to give up. The final truth came to Admiral Crixvin in the form of an intelligence report that changed everything. His hands shook as he read the document that had taken his best analysts weeks to compile. The human fleet wasn't just an invasion force. It was something far more terrifying. Sir, his intelligence chief Zelmon said quietly, we've discovered why the humans launched this operation. Earth is dying. Crixvin looked up from the report. Dying? Environmental collapse, sir. Their home planet has maybe 50 years left before it becomes uninhabitable. The humans didn't send a military fleet to conquer us. They sent their entire civilization to find a new home. The weight of this revelation crushed down on Crixvin like a collapsed star. Every ship in the human armada carried not just weapons, but families, children, entire communities. These weren't soldiers seeking glory or conquest. They were refugees fleeing extinction, and they fought with the desperation of a species facing the end of everything they had ever known. How many? Crixvin asked. Best estimates suggest the entire human space-based population, sir. Maybe 2 million people spread across their fleet. They're not trying to defeat us and go home. They're trying to make a new home here. On the Liberty, Captain Murphy stood before a holographic display showing their target, the Zephyrian core, world of Sanctuary Prime. It was a beautiful planet, with blue oceans and green continents that reminded him painfully of Earth. Soon, it would be home to the first permanent human settlement in this sector of the galaxy. Final approach, Captain, his navigation officer reported. All ships are in position. Murphy nodded. Behind him, the bridge crew worked at their stations with the quiet efficiency of people who had spent months preparing for this moment. These weren't career military officers. They were ordinary people who had become extraordinary through necessity. Signal from the colony ships, Communications Officer Lisa Park reported. Commander Bell reports all settlement equipment is ready for deployment. Sandra Bell commanded the massive colony ship New Horizon, which had once carried tourists on luxury cruises around Jupiter's moons. Now it carried the prefabricated components for humanity's first major city in alien space, along with the 10,000 colonists who would build it. What about the agricultural ships? Murphy asked. Dr. Turner reports all hydroponic systems are functioning perfectly. We can begin food production immediately after landing. Grace Turner had transformed several cargo vessels into floating farms that could operate in any environment. Her team had spent the journey developing new crops that could grow in alien soil using genetic samples from every plant species on Earth. On Sanctuary Prime, the Zephyrian population watched the sky fill with human ships, but instead of the bombardment they expected, they saw something that confused and terrified them even more. The humans were deploying construction equipment. Sir, the humans are building, reported General Kexmore to his superiors. They're not attacking our cities. They're establishing their own. The human landing operation was unlike anything in galactic military history. Instead of assault troops, the first wave consisted of construction workers and engineers. Instead of military bases, they built civilian settlements. Instead of weapon factories, they established farms and schools. Colonel Diana Hayes oversaw the security for the landing zones, but her job was to protect construction workers, not coordinate attacks. Her soldiers had traded their weapons for engineering tools, helping to build the infrastructure that would support millions of human refugees. Status report. Hayes asked her subordinate, Lieutenant Roy Martinez. Perimeter is secure, ma'am. The Zephyrian civilians are keeping their distance, but they're not hostile. I think they're more confused than afraid. And they were confused. The Empire's propaganda had painted humans as savage conquerors, but the reality was completely different. The humans were polite, organized, and focused entirely on building rather than destroying. Back on the Eternal Glory, Admiral Crixvin received reports that shattered his understanding of warfare forever. Sir, the humans have established 17 settlements on 6 different worlds. They're not military outposts, they're actual cities. What do you mean, cities? Schools, sir. Hospitals, shopping centers, parks. They're building complete communities for permanent habitation. The intelligence suggests they're planning to bring millions more humans from other parts of their fleet. Crixvin stared at the tactical display. The human fleet hadn't conquered the Zephyrian worlds. They had simply moved in and started building alongside the existing populations. In some cases, human engineers were actually helping to repair Zephyrian infrastructure damaged during the fighting. Sir, we're receiving a communication from the human fleet commander, his communications officer reported. Put it through. Captain. Murphy's image appeared on the main screen. He looked tired but determined, like someone who had carried an enormous burden for a very long time. Admiral Crixvin, Murphy began. I believe it's time we talked. You're in no position to negotiate. Human, your fleet may be large, but we still control the core systems. Murphy smiled sadly. Admiral, I don't think you understand what's happening here. We're not trying to conquer your empire. We're trying to join it. The bridge of the Eternal Glory fell silent. What? Crixvin managed. Earth is dying, Admiral. Our entire species. Has maybe 50 years before our homeworld becomes uninhabitable. We've spent the last decade converting our entire civilization into a migration fleet. Every ship you see carries families, communities, entire cities worth of people. We didn't come here to destroy your worlds. We came here to live alongside you. Murphy gestured to something off-screen. We've established settlements on 17 worlds in your outer systems, but we haven't displaced a single Zephyrian citizen. We've built our cities in empty areas, and in many cases our engineers are helping to improve your infrastructure. Crixvin checked the reports. It was true. The human settlements were bringing advanced technology and industrial capacity to worlds that had been struggling economically. Their agricultural systems were producing surplus food that they were sharing with local populations. We're refugees. Admiral, Murphy continued. The largest refugee population in galactic history. Our entire species is looking for a new home among the stars. We fought your forces because we had to, because the choice was between fighting and watching our children die as our planet collapsed. But your fleet, your weapons. We converted everything we had, Admiral. Every cargo ship, every passenger liner, every mining platform, every research vessel. Our entire space-based civilization became a migration fleet because that was the only way to save our species. Crixvin felt the universe shift around him. You're telling me that your entire military fleet consists of converted civilian vessels? Yes, sir. Our greatest weapons are mining lasers. Our troop transports are luxury cruise ships. Our command vessels are research platforms. We fight with the tools we use for building, farming, and exploring because those are the only tools we have. The terrible truth finally sank in. The Galactic Empire, with all its military might and advanced technology, had been defeated by a species of refugees using construction equipment and mining tools. The humans hadn't won through superior weapons or tactics. They had won through sheer determination and the absolute refusal to give up. What do you want from us? Crixvin asked. Permission to stay, Murphy replied simply. We'll be good neighbors. We'll share our technology, contribute to your economy, help build your infrastructure. All we ask is the right to build homes for our people and raise our children in peace. Crixvin looked around his bridge at the faces of his officers. They all understood what this meant. The Empire could continue fighting, but against what? Against refugees who just wanted to survive? Against families who were trying to build new homes? I'll need to consult with the High Command, Crixvin said finally. Of course, Murphy replied. But Admiral, Our ships are already building, our people are already settling. Our children are already calling these worlds home. The choice isn't whether we stay. The choice is whether we stay as enemies or as neighbors. The communication ended, leaving Crixvin alone with the most important decision in galactic history. Outside his viewport, human construction ships worked alongside Zephyrian vessels, building something new. Something that had never existed before in the galaxy. A civilization born from the merger of refugee determination and galactic acceptance. The humans had won their new home not through conquest, but through the simple act of proving that survival and cooperation were stronger than any weapon in the universe. The Starship Venture glided silently through the darkness near Saturn's magnificent rings. John Miller stood on the bridge, his experienced eyes scanning the viewscreens. After 20 years as an astronaut, this mission was the pinnacle of his career, humanity's first deep space expedition beyond the asteroid belt. But more than professional pride filled his heart. He turned to watch his 10-year-old daughter Kate, who floated beside the science station with wide, excited eyes. "Dad, look, you can see the ice particles in the rings from here," Kate said, her small finger pointing at the glittering display. Her brown hair was tied back in a simple ponytail that floated slightly in the low-gravity section of the bridge. John smiled. Kate was one of 12 children selected for the Educational Frontier program, bringing the brightest young minds on this historic journey. Some had questioned bringing children into deep space, but Earth wanted this mission to represent humanity's future, not just its present. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" John replied. "We're the first humans to see this with our own eyes." Captain, Laura Winters approached them, her uniform crisp despite 3 months in space. "Commander Miller, long-range sensors are picking up something unusual near Titan." John straightened immediately. "Unusual how?" "Energy signatures like nothing we've recorded before. Too precise to be natural." The bridge fell silent. Everyone understood what this might mean. "Should I return to the classroom module, Dad?" Kate asked quietly, sensing the change in mood. Before John could answer, Communications Officer Ben Harris called out, "Captain, we're receiving a transmission. It's not coming from Earth or any of our colonies." Captain Winters took a deep breath. On screen, the main display flickered, then filled with an image that would forever change human history. A being with gray-blue skin and 4 eyes stared back at them. Its face was angular, almost reptilian, with no visible hair. Behind it stood others of its kind, working at stations that glowed with strange symbols. "We are the Jarkul," the being spoke in a surprisingly clear voice, somehow translated into English. "You have entered space claimed by our empire." Captain Winters stepped forward. "I am Captain Laura Winters of the Earthship Venture. We come in peace, seeking friendship with other intelligent species." The alien's upper eyes narrowed. "Your species is unknown to us. Explain your technological capabilities and armaments." John placed a protective hand on Kate's shoulder, feeling suddenly uneasy. "We are explorers," Captain Winters replied carefully. "Our ship carries minimal defensive capabilities. We seek knowledge, not conflict." The alien conferred with others off-screen, speaking in clicks and hisses their translator couldn't process. When it returned its attention to them, all 4 eyes had hardened. "Our scans detect primitive weapons technology. You claim to be peaceful, yet come armed. The Jarkul Empire has ruled this sector for 10,000 years. New species must be properly evaluated before contact is permitted." 3 more alien ships appeared on their sensors surrounding the Venture. "Sir," Security Chief Greg Patel said quietly to Captain Winters, "they've locked weapons on us." Captain Winters tried again. "We meant no offense. We didn't know this space was claimed. We're a young species taking our first steps beyond our solar system." "Captain," Chief Engineer Maria Diaz called from her station, "they're scanning us deeply. They're accessing our databases." The alien commander's expression changed subtly. "Your records indicate your species is aggressive, territorial, and technologically advancing at an unusual rate. This combination requires careful management." Without warning, energy beams lanced out from the nearest Jarkul ship, striking the Venture's main communications array. "Return fire," Captain Winters ordered as the ship shuddered. "Weapons only at 30% capacity," Chief Patel responded, firing the ship's limited defenses. John grabbed Kate. "Emergency Protocol 7, all civilians to escape pods." Alarms blared throughout the ship as John rushed Kate toward the nearest evacuation point where other children and non-essential personnel were gathering. "I'm scared, Dad," Kate whispered, as he strapped her into an escape pod designed to return to Earth, automatically. "It'll be okay," John promised, kissing her forehead. "These pods are stealthy. They'll slip away while we keep the aliens busy. I'll see you back home." "Promise?" Kate asked, tears floating from her eyes in the zero gravity. "Promise," John said, firmly, forcing himself to smile before sealing her pod. He watched through the small window as Kate's pod and 11 others ejected from the Venture, small stealth systems engaging to hide them from detection. Then he raced back to the bridge. The battle was going poorly. The Venture was a research vessel with minimal weapons, never designed for combat against advanced alien technology. "Status?" John demanded as he returned to his station. "Engines at 60%. Shields failing," Captain Winters reported grimly. "We managed to damage one of their smaller vessels." "The civilian pods?" John asked. "Away clean," Chief Patel confirmed. "Stealth systems functioning. Wait." His face paled as he stared at his console. "Sir, they've detected the pods." John's blood turned to ice. "No," on the view screen. They watched in horror as one of the Jarkul ships broke off pursuit and turned toward the fleeing escape pods. "They're just children," Captain Winters shouted into the communication channel. "Non-combatants, please!" The alien commander's face reappeared on screen. "Young or not, we have studied your history. Your species grows to become warriors. The Jarkul Empire prevents threats before they mature." John stood frozen as the Jarkul ship fired precisely at the escape pods. One by one, the small vessels exploded in silent bursts of light and debris. "Kate!" The scream tore from John's throat as he watched Pod 7, Kate's pod, disintegrate. In that moment, something changed in every human on the bridge. Captain Winters' voice turned to steel as she ordered, "All power to engines. Get us out of here. Someone needs to survive to tell Earth what happened here today." The battered Venture managed a desperate burst of speed, just enough to break free from the Jarkul ships. As they fled toward Earth, Engineer Diaz worked frantically to boost their engines beyond designed limits. John sat motionless at his station, staring at the last recorded images of the escape pod's destruction. The crew worked around him in grim silence, all of them understanding that this day would change humanity's future forever. 2 weeks later, the damaged Venture limped back to Earth orbit. They brought with them footage of first contact, the unprovoked attack, and most importantly, the deliberate destruction of 12 escape pods carrying the brightest children of Earth. As the news spread across the planet, a single question formed in the minds of billions. How would humanity respond to the empire that had slaughtered its children? John Miller, carrying the small backpack Kate had brought aboard the Venture, walked down the landing ramp to where his wife Susan waited. When their eyes met, no words were needed. They embraced in silent grief as cameras flashed around them. The image of their embrace would soon appear on recruitment posters worldwide, beneath words that would launch humanity's response. "They took one of ours. We'll take all of theirs." Susan Miller stood at the window of her office at the newly formed Earth Defense Command. Rain streaked down the glass, matching the tears she had shed for weeks after learning about Kate. But today, her eyes were dry. It had been 3 months since the Venture returned with its terrible news. 3 months since she had held her husband John as they both broke down on the landing pad. 3 months since humanity learned they were not alone in the universe, and that the universe was hostile. Susan turned away from the window and faced the wall covered with photos of the 12 children who had died. Kate's smile beamed from the center picture. She had been so proud to be selected for the mission, so excited to see the stars up close. Now her name had become a rallying cry across Earth. The door opened, and President Olivia Wright entered. The weight of recent events showed in the dark circles under her eyes. The United Nations Security Council has approved your proposal, President Wright said without preamble. Project Retribution begins today. Susan nodded. As Earth's foremost military strategist, she had spent the last 2 months developing plans that would have seemed insane before the attack. Now nothing seemed too extreme. The public is still in shock, President Wright continued, sitting heavily in the chair across from Susan's desk. But they're united in a way I've never seen. Every nation has pledged resources. Old enemies are cooperating. It's unprecedented. The Jarkul made a mistake, Susan said, her voice calm and cold. They thought killing our children would frighten us into submission. Instead, they've united us. President Wright looked up at the wall of photos. Do you think we have a chance against them? Their technology is clearly superior. For now, Susan replied. But we have something they don't understand. What's that? A reason to fight that goes beyond territory or resources. They killed our children. Susan tapped a button on her desk, bringing up holographic displays of designs that had been developed in the weeks since the attack. And we've learned from them already. Our scientists analyzed every second of footage from the venture. We know more about their weapons and shields than they realize. The door opened again, and Admiral Frank Carter walked in. The former Navy SEAL had been appointed to lead Earth's new space fleet. Dr. Peterson is ready with his presentation, he announced. President Wright stood. Let's see what he's come up with. They walked together to the large conference room where Dr. Alan Peterson waited. Once a theoretical physicist at MIT, he had been working day and night since the attack, driven by the memory of his niece who had been aboard the venture. Madam President, Mrs. Miller, Admiral, he greeted, his tired eyes brightening as he gestured to the large holographic display. What you're looking at is our answer to Jarkul energy weapons. The display showed what looked like a modified version of the shields the aliens had used. We've reverse-engineered their basic principles from the sensor data, Dr. Peterson explained. Their weapons work on a frequency we've never encountered before, but once we understood the pattern, we found a way to counter it. How long until we can implement this? Admiral Carter asked. 6 months for prototypes, a year for full production. If we redirect 30% of global manufacturing, President Wright frowned. That's a massive economic shift. It's necessary, Susan said firmly. The Jarkul will return. They made that clear when they left. They see us as a potential threat to be eliminated. Admiral Carter nodded in agreement. We intercepted communications from their ships before they left our system. Our linguistics team has been working on translations. They called us primitive but dangerous. They're planning to return with a larger force. Then we need to be ready, President Wright decided. Dr. Peterson, you'll have everything you need. As they left the meeting, John Miller was waiting in the hallway. Once Earth's most celebrated astronaut, now he was the face of humanity's grief and determination. His testimony about the attack, about watching helplessly as his daughter's escape pod was destroyed, had moved billions to tears, and then to action. They've approved everything, Susan told him quietly as they walked together. All of it. John nodded. He had lost weight since returning to Earth, and his once friendly eyes now held a hardness that never faded. I've been working with the pilot training program. We have 10,000 volunteers already. For ships we haven't even built yet, Susan noted. They'll be built, John said with certainty. Have you seen what's happening at the lunar bases? They've tripled in size. The shipyards are taking shape ahead of schedule. They entered a vast control room where hundreds of people worked at stations monitoring space for any sign of the Jarkul return. On the largest screen was a map of Earth's solar system, with a defensive plan slowly taking shape. Lisa Bennett, the lead AI specialist, approached them with a tablet. The new detection system is online, she reported. If anything larger than a meter enters our solar system, we'll know immediately. Good, Susan replied. What about the combat simulations? Lisa gestured to a side screen where virtual ships fought in digital space. The AI is learning from what little we know of their tactics. It's not much, but it's a start. Across the room, Major Steve Howard was drilling a team in new combat techniques. They have 4 eyes and better peripheral vision, he was saying. That means our usual flanking approaches won't work. We need to think differently. Susan watched it all with grim satisfaction. Everywhere she looked, humans were adapting, learning, preparing. The Jarkul thought they had encountered a primitive species that would cower in fear after a show of force. Instead, they had awakened something they couldn't understand. Later that night, Susan and John sat in their kitchen, the house too quiet without Kate's laughter. They rarely spoke of their grief anymore. It had transformed into something else, something focused and sharp. I accessed more of the translated Jarkul communications today, Susan said as she pushed away her barely touched dinner. They've conquered over 100 species. They follow the same pattern each time. Identify developing civilizations, assess their threat level, then either destroy them entirely or subjugate them before they can become competitors. John's hand tightened around his glass. They've never met humans before. No, Susan agreed. They haven't. She pulled up a holographic display showing the latest designs for Earth's first true warship. It was sleek and deadly, incorporating everything they had learned from studying the enemy. The first one will be ready in 18 months, she said. We're calling it the Retribution. John looked at the display, then at the photo of Kate on their refrigerator. It's not enough to defend ourselves, he said quietly. They need to understand what they've done, what line they've crossed. Susan nodded, reaching across the table to take his hand. They will. The Jarkul Empire slaughtered a human child thinking we were too weak to respond. They're about to learn exactly what that means. Outside their window, the night sky was filled with more activity than ever before in human history. Rockets launched, hourly, carrying materials and workers to the growing lunar shipyards. Earth was preparing for war among the stars, united by grief and resolve. And somewhere in the galaxy, the Jarkul Empire remained unaware of the storm they had created, a storm named Kate. 1 year passed since the Jarkul attack. Earth had changed in ways no one could have imagined before. The night sky above the lunar surface blazed with lights as thousands of workers moved about the massive shipyards hidden on the far side of the moon. Here, away from Earth and prying alien eyes, humanity built its response. Captain Eric Young stood at the observation deck, watching as the final sections of the Retribution were locked into place. The warship was unlike anything humans had built before. Sleek, dangerous, and filled with technology that had not existed a year ago. Impressive, isn't it? Dr. Alan Peterson joined him at the window. The physicist looked older now. His hair, grayer, but his eyes shone with fierce pride. 1 year ago, I was teaching theoretical physics to college students. Now we're building starships. Captain Young nodded. How many ships will be ready for the first wave? 50 combat-ready vessels. By next month, another 100 in various stages of completion. Dr. Peterson pointed to the far end of the shipyard. The Miller Drive is performing beyond expectations in all tests. Our ships will be able to match Jarkul speeds. The Miller Drive, named after Kate, was Dr. Peterson's greatest achievement. By studying the sensor readings from the Venture, he had unlocked the secret to faster-than-light travel that the Jarkul used. What had taken alien civilizations centuries to develop, human desperation had mastered in months. On the other side of the shipyard, Major Steve Howard led his Special Forces team through another training exercise. For 12 months, they had trained relentlessly in simulated Jarkul environments, learning to fight an enemy with 4 eyes and different physical capabilities. Again, Major Howard shouted as his team cleared a mock alien vessel. Their vision range is wider than ours. Taylor, you're still entering their field of view too early. Private Sam Taylor nodded grimly and reset his position. Like everyone, in the Special Forces unit he had lost someone on the Venture. His younger brother had been one of the educational staff. Their unit patch bore the simple words, "Remember the 12, a reference to the children killed in the escape pods. Back. On Earth in the buried command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, Susan Miller reviewed the latest intelligence reports. The room around her had transformed from a hastily assembled crisis center to the heart of Earth's war machine. The Jarkul haven't returned to our system since the attack, Lisa Bennett reported. The AI specialist had created an early warning system that stretched far beyond Earth's previous capabilities. But we've detected increased communications between their outposts. Something is happening. Susan studied the star charts where they had mapped the Jarkul territory based on intercepted communications. They're preparing something. Have we made progress on their language? Yes, Lisa replied. Our AIs have analyzed all the communications we captured. We now understand about 70% of their standard language, enough to know they're discussing Earth. And, Susan pressed, they're calling us the primitives who resist classification. They seem confused by our silence. Lisa allowed herself a small smile. They expected us to either try making peace or to launch some small, desperate attack. They have no idea what we've been building. Susan nodded with grim satisfaction. The Jarkul Empire had made a crucial mistake. They had judged humanity by its current technology, not by its potential. They had shown their hand too early, given Earth a reason to unite, and then left them alone to prepare. Dr. Nicole Rogers wants to see you, Lisa added. She says she's found something important. Susan made her way to the biological research wing where Dr. Rogers, Earth's leading xenobiologist, waited with excitement barely contained on her face. We found their weakness, Dr. Rogers announced without preamble. She pulled up a holographic display of Jarkul physiology, constructed from the brief glimpses they had from the Venture's recordings. Their respiratory system can't handle certain compounds that are harmless to humans. If we can introduce this gas mixture to their ship environments, we can incapacitate them without firing a shot. Susan reviewed the data. Can we produce this in quantity? Already happening, Dr. Rogers confirmed. We'll have enough to outfit all Special Forces teams in 2 weeks. That evening, Susan joined her husband John for a rare dinner together. They met in the small apartment they had taken near the command center, neither of them able to face their family home with Kate's empty room. The Retribution will be ready for its first test flight next week, John told her. As head of pilot training, he had spent the past year teaching a new generation of astronauts to become warriors. They've asked me to be aboard. Susan looked up sharply. Is that necessary? I'm still one of the most experienced pilots we have, John said. His face had hardened over the past year, the grief channeled into purpose. And I need to be there, Susan, for Kate. Susan couldn't argue. She felt the same driving need. Every plan she developed, every strategy she created was fueled by the memory of their daughter's face. The Jarkul had taken Kate from them, thinking it would weaken humanity. Instead, it had focused Earth's response into something terrifying. A week later, the command center buzzed with activity as the Retribution prepared for its maiden voyage. On the main screen, the massive warship moved slowly out of the lunar shipyard, its sleek hull gleaming in the sunlight. All systems green, reported the flight controller. Miller Drive powering up. Susan watched with the entire command staff as the ship that represented humanity's future hovered above the lunar surface. Then in a flash of controlled energy it vanished, only to reappear 30 seconds later near Jupiter. The room erupted in cheers. The Miller Drive worked perfectly. Humanity could now travel through space at speeds that matched the Jarkul. The playing field had been leveled. Time to move to the next phase, President Wright said, standing beside Susan. How long until we're ready for Operation Kate's Justice? 3 months, Susan replied. We'll hit 5 of their outposts simultaneously. They won't know what's happening until it's too late. On the screen, the Retribution flashed back to lunar orbit, completing its first successful test. More ships would follow, each carrying the combined knowledge, determination, and fury of a planet that had watched its children die. As Susan looked around the room at the celebrating scientists, soldiers, and leaders, she realized that the Jarkul had made the most dangerous mistake possible. They had shown humans what they were facing, given them a reason to fight, and then left them alone to prepare. The Jarkul Empire had ruled through fear for 10,000 years. They had never encountered a species that transformed fear into resolve. They had never met humans before, and as 50 warships prepared to launch in the coming months, Susan Miller knew that the galaxy was about to change forever. 5 years had passed since Kate Miller's death. Earth had chosen this day deliberately. The Jarkul would learn that humans remembered. The Retribution led a fleet of 50 warships through the darkness of space, each vessel carrying the combined knowledge, technology, and fury developed over those 5 years. Captain Eric Young stood on the bridge, looking at the holographic display of Ganymede, Jupiter's largest moon. Intelligence had confirmed that the Jarkul had established a major outpost there, believing humans couldn't detect it. All ships. Report ready, Captain, First Officer Diane Bell announced. Every crew member on the bridge wore a small pin with Kate Miller's picture on it. Operation Kate's Justice is awaiting your command. Captain Young nodded. Send the message to all ships, then broadcast on all frequencies. Officer Bell tapped her console. Ready, sir. This is Captain Eric Young of the Earth vessel Retribution. To the Jarkul forces at Ganymede. 5 years ago, you attacked an unarmed Earth ship and murdered 12 children. Today, we return. Remember Kate Miller. He signaled to cut the transmission, then addressed the fleet. All ships, engage Miller. Drives on my mark. Formation Alpha, 3-2-1 mark. In perfect synchronization, 50 Earth warships vanished from Earth orbit and reappeared around Ganymede. The Jarkul outpost, a sprawling base built into the moon's surface, immediately lit up with alarm signals. 7 Jarkul ships rose to meet them, but their movements showed confusion. They had expected primitive vessels, easy targets like the Venture had been. Instead, they faced ships that matched their technology, moved with coordinated precision, and carried weapons specifically designed to target Jarkul vulnerabilities. They're hailing us, Officer Bell reported. Ignore it, Captain Young ordered. Deploy boarding teams to the main base. Target their engines only on the ships. We need prisoners and data. The Earth fleet moved with practiced precision. Special forces teams led by Major Steve Howard launched toward the base while the Retribution and 5 other ships engaged the Jarkul vessels. Earth ships fired weapons that disrupted the aliens' shield frequencies, technology developed by studying the brief battle with the Venture. Inside his assault craft, Major Howard checked his team's equipment one last time. Remember your training. Their vision gives them advantages we don't have, but we know about them. They know nothing about us. Use the gas grenades first, aim for their breathing apparatus. The assault craft docked with the Jarkul base, cutting through the outer hull. When the doors opened, Major Howard's team moved in with ruthless efficiency. The first Jarkul soldiers they encountered fired energy weapons, but the humans wore armor designed to disperse the energy. Dr. Peterson's team had done their work well. Gas grenades now, Major Howard ordered. His soldiers tossed small devices that released the compound Dr. Rogers had discovered, harmless to humans but devastating to Jarkul respiratory systems. The alien soldiers collapsed, gasping through their breathing masks. As they pushed deeper into the base, the team downloaded data from every console they passed. Lisa Bennett's AI programs translated and sorted the information instantly, sending it back to Earth. In space, the battle was equally one-sided. The Jarkul ships fought with increasing desperation as they realized their weapons weren't as effective as they should be. Captain Young directed the fleet with calm precision, disabling engines and weapons systems without destroying the vessels. Sir, Officer Bell called. We're detecting a power surge from their command ship. They may be preparing to self-destruct. Target their power core with an EMP, Captain Young ordered. I want that ship intact. The electromagnetic pulse hit the Jarkul command ship just as its core began to overload. The vessel went dark, drifting silently as emergency systems failed. Boarding team ready, Officer Bell reported. Send them in, Captain Young said. I want their commander alive. Inside the Jarkul base, Major Howard's team had reached the Central Command Center. Most of the alien staff were unconscious from the gas, but the base commander remained standing, protected by a sealed environment suit. The four-eyed alien stared at the humans with a mixture of shock and rage. How? The commander demanded in his clicking language, now instantly translated by the programs Earth had developed. "You are primitives. You had only just reached your outer planets." Major Howard stepped forward. "You made a mistake. You killed our children." He nodded to his team, who secured the alien commander. Throughout the base and in orbit, the scene repeated as Earth forces captured Jar-Cool personnel and vessels. "The data is incredible," Lisa Bennett reported to Susan Miller back at Earth Command. Screens showed the battle in real time, transmitted through the new communication network humans had built. "We now have access to their entire database, star charts, technology schematics, records of other species they've conquered." Susan watched as the Earth ships secured their objectives with minimal losses. The plan she had developed over 5 years was working perfectly. "What about their homeworld?" she asked. Lisa pulled up a star chart. "We have its location and defenses. They never considered we might reach this far. There's more. They've been monitoring Earth for decades. They knew we were advancing quickly. The attack on the Venture wasn't random. They were testing us, planning to subjugate Earth before we became a threat." Susan's expression hardened. "They failed. On the Retribution, Captain Young received the final reports from all ships. 6 Jar-Cool vessels captured, 1 left partially functional, enough to limp back to their territory. The main base secured with minimal Earth casualties. "Send the message to the remaining Jar-Cool ship," he ordered. Officer Bell opened the channel. "Ready, sir." Captain Young looked directly at the camera, knowing his words would reach the Jar-Cool Empire. "You murdered our children and thought we would cower in fear. Instead, we prepared. This is only the beginning. We now know where every Jar-Cool world is located. We can strike any of them at will, but we are not like you. We offer one chance for peace. Representatives of Earth will meet with your leaders in 1 month at these coordinates. If you refuse or attempt any further aggression, what happened at Ganymede will seem merciful by comparison." He ended the transmission and turned to his crew. "Release the ship. Make sure they can reach their territory." The damaged Jar-Cool vessel limped away, carrying news that would shake the foundations of an empire that had known only victory for 10,000 years. As the Earth fleet secured their prisoners and prepared to return home, John Miller received the news in his quarters on the lunar base. He looked at the photo of Kate on his desk, then at the star chart showing Jar-Cool territory. "We did it, Kate," he whispered. "They know who we are now." Across the solar system, humanity celebrated their first victory. But everyone understood, this was only the beginning. The Jar-Cool Empire had ruled through fear for millennia. Now they were learning what it meant to feel fear themselves. 5 years had passed since Kate Miller's death. Earth had chosen this day deliberately. The Jar-Cool would learn that humans remembered. The Retribution led a fleet of 50 warships through the darkness of space, each vessel carrying the combined knowledge, technology, and fury developed over those 5 years. Captain Eric Young stood on the bridge, looking at the holographic display of Ganymede, Jupiter's largest moon. Intelligence had confirmed that the Jar-Cool had established a major outpost there, believing humans couldn't detect it. "All ships. Report ready, Captain," First Officer Diane Bell announced. Every crew member on the bridge wore a small pin with Kate Miller's picture on it. "Operation Kate's Justice is awaiting your command," Captain Young nodded. "Send the message to all ships, then broadcast on all frequencies." Officer Bell tapped her console. "Ready, sir." "This is Captain Eric Young of the Earth vessel Retribution. To the Jar-Cool forces at Ganymede. 5 years ago, you attacked an unarmed Earth ship and murdered 12 children. Today, we return. Remember Kate Miller." He signaled to cut the transmission, then addressed the fleet. "All ships, engage Miller. Drives on my mark. Formation Alpha, 3-2-1 mark." In perfect synchronization, 50 Earth warships vanished from Earth orbit and reappeared around Ganymede. The Jar-Cool outpost, a sprawling base built into the moon's surface, immediately lit up with alarm signals. 7 Jar-Cool ships rose to meet them, but their movements showed confusion. They had expected primitive vessels, easy targets like the Venture had been. Instead, they faced ships that matched their technology, moved with coordinated precision, and carried weapons specifically designed to target Jarkul vulnerabilities. "They're hailing us," Officer Bell reported. "Ignore it," Captain Young ordered. "Deploy boarding teams to the main base. Target their engines only on the ships. We need prisoners and data." The Earth fleet moved with practiced precision. Special Forces teams led by Major Steve Howard launched toward the base while the Retribution and 5 other ships engaged the Jarkul vessels. Earth ships fired weapons that disrupted the aliens' shield frequencies, technology developed by studying the brief battle with the Venture. Inside his assault craft, Major Howard checked his team's equipment one last time. "Remember your training. Their vision gives them advantages we don't have, but we know about them. They know nothing about us. Use the gas grenades first, aim for their breathing apparatus." The assault craft docked with the Jarkul base, cutting through the outer hull. When the doors opened, Major Howard's team moved in with ruthless efficiency. The first Jarkul soldiers they encountered fired energy weapons, but the humans wore armor designed to disperse the energy. Dr. Peterson's team had done their work well. "Gas grenades now," Major Howard ordered. His soldiers tossed small devices that released the compound Dr. Rogers had discovered, harmless to humans but devastating to Jarkul respiratory systems. The alien soldiers collapsed, gasping through their breathing masks. As they pushed deeper into the base, the team downloaded data from every console they passed. Lisa Bennett's AI programs translated and sorted the information instantly, sending it back to Earth. In space, the battle was equally one-sided. The Jarkul ships fought with increasing desperation as they realized their weapons weren't as effective as they should be. Captain Young directed the fleet with calm precision, disabling engines and weapons systems without destroying the vessels. "Sir," Officer Bell called, "we're detecting a power surge from their command ship. They may be preparing to self-destruct." "Target their power core with an EMP," Captain Young ordered. "I want that ship intact." The electromagnetic pulse hit the Jarkul command ship just as its core began to overload. The vessel went dark, drifting silently as emergency systems failed. "Boarding team ready," Officer Bell reported. "Send them in," Captain Young said. "I want their commander alive." Inside the Jarkul base, Major Howard's team had reached the Central Command Center. Most of the alien staff were unconscious from the gas, but the base commander remained standing, protected by a sealed environment suit. The four-eyed alien stared at the humans with a mixture of shock and rage. "How?" the commander demanded in his clicking language, now instantly translated by the programs Earth had developed. "You are primitives. You had only just reached your outer planets." Major Howard stepped forward. "You made a mistake. You killed our children." He nodded to his team, who secured the alien commander. Throughout the base and in orbit, the scene repeated as Earth forces captured Jarkul personnel and vessels. "The data is incredible," Lisa Bennett reported to Susan Miller back at Earth Command. Screens showed the battle in real time, transmitted through the new communication network humans had built. "We now have access to their entire database, star charts, technology schematics, records of other species they've conquered." Susan watched as the Earth ships secured their objectives with minimal losses. The plan she had developed over 5 years was working perfectly. "What about their homeworld?" she asked. Lisa pulled up a star chart. "We have its location and defenses. They never considered we might reach this far. There's more. They've been monitoring Earth for decades. They knew we were advancing quickly. The attack on the Venture wasn't random. They were testing us, planning to subjugate Earth before we became a threat." Susan's expression hardened. "They failed." On the Retribution, Captain Young received the final reports from all ships. 6 Jarkul vessels captured, 1 left partially functional, enough to limp back to their territory. The main base secured with minimal Earth casualties. "Send the message to the remaining Jarkul ship," he ordered. Officer Bell opened the channel. "Ready, sir." Captain Young looked directly at the camera, knowing his words would reach the Jarkul Empire. "You murdered our children and thought we would cower in fear. Instead, we prepared. This is only the beginning. We now know where every Jarkul world is located. We can strike any of them at will, but we are not like you. We offer one chance for peace. Representatives of Earth will meet with your leaders in 1 month at these coordinates. If you refuse or attempt any further aggression, what happened at Ganymede will seem merciful by comparison. He ended the transmission and turned to his crew. Release the ship. Make sure they can reach their territory. The damaged Jarkul vessel limped away, carrying news that would shake the foundations of an empire that had known only victory for 10,000 years. As the Earth fleet secured their prisoners and prepared to return home, John Miller received the news in his quarters on the lunar base. He looked at the photo of Kate on his desk, then at the star chart showing Jarkul territory. "We did it, Kate," he whispered. "They know who we are now." Across the solar system, humanity celebrated their first victory. But everyone understood, this was only the beginning. The Jarkul Empire had ruled through fear for millennia. Now they were learning what it meant to feel fear themselves.